Mark Dowie is the recipient of 18 national awards for investigative journalism. He broke the Ford Pinto story, the Dalcon Shield story, wrote the Pulitzer Prize-nominated Losing Ground, American Environmentalism at the Close of the 20th Century, and is a former editor of Mother Jones magazine.
There's an arrogance in the mainstream movement, which is very elite, well-educated, towards the grassroots, which they perceive as being sort of grubby and disorganized and obstreperous, and they're constantly complaining that grassroots activity is getting in their way, in the way of what they're doing, because it's bugging politicians at the local level while they're trying to talk sense to them. No social movement has ever succeeded in a democratic society that I know of without a strong, energized, and well-supported grassroots. This was a lesson that the civil rights movement learned early in the movement. And early, in the very early stages of the movement, the civil rights movement was pretty much an elite movement as well. Foundation-funded lawyers like Thurgood Marshall thought that they could win it through the courts. And I've got quotes in my book, actually, about Thurgood Marshall saying really insulting things about Martin Luther King, calling him a rabble-rouser, claiming that he was counterproductive to the social rights movement. Well, if you look at the history of the movement, it could not have been done without Martin Luther King and the people that he brought onto the streets in the South and eventually all over the country. Saul Alinsky used to talk about a thing called total tactics. Saul Alinsky was probably the most effective organizer of grassroots activists in the history of this country, and he ended up with an institute in Chicago where he trained grassroots activists. Total tactics means you can't win with one tactic, you can't win with two tactics. You've got to win with several tactics working at once at every level of the community, which means you have someone in the offices of Congress and Senate blasting away at the issues there. You also have somebody trying to get through the media, into the media. You also have people that are doing nothing but communication, but you also have people that are making trouble for power at the local level. Total tactics. And you know, Saul Alinsky said he would train people to, in Chicago, when they had an infestation of rats and the city would not take care of it. Said, bring the rats and put them on the steps of City Hall. That's the kind of militancy that a social movement needs at its base. Why the big organizations won't do that sort of thing today is because they find militancy a sort of convenient foil up which they can say, I like these people. I mean, Brower used to say, I like Earth First because it makes me look reasonable. So they will use the militants in their movement to make themselves look more respectable, but they won't work side by side with them. And if push came to shove, they'll turn them in. The financial structure of the movement, the overall financial structure of the movement, is probably the biggest problem for the grassroots. Right now, there's about $3.5 billion that go into this movement every year from every conceivable source: individual contributions, foundations, corporate support, some government support for special projects. 70% of that money goes to the 25 largest organizations, the ones I was talking about before with the big offices in Washington, New York, and San Francisco. The other 30% is divided up or fought over by the other 15,000 organizations. And you know, a lot of that money is bake sales and rummage sales and very, very small donations, door-to-door canvassing, hard work raising little bits of money. I think if we could find some way to change the ratio from 70-30 to 50-50, let the big organizations with their expensive offices and their high salaries and their professional lawyers and scientists and everything have 50%, keep 50% of the environmental philanthropy, and shift 20% to the grassroots, it would make an enormous difference. And if you're doing the arithmetic, you'll see I'm asking for a shift of about $750 million. Conservation International is now the largest international conservation group, largely because of one grant. $280 million from the Gordon Moore Foundation. Gordon Moore, the founder of Intel, created a foundation that is largely a conservation foundation. And that is the largest single conservation grant ever given to a single organization. To me, it's the most unimaginative philanthropy I can think of, to write a $280 million check to one organization. If I were able to sit down with Gordon Moore and say, let me try to make your philanthropy a little more imaginative. I'd say, okay, take $280 million and designate it for conservation. You like CI? Give them $140 million, half of it, right? Take the other $140 million, divide it up into $1 million lots, use your staff. You got an enormous staff at your foundation. Send them out to find the 140 best, most effective, potentially effective, pioneering, energized environmental groups and give them each $1 million. I'm not talking about $25 donors. I'm talking about people who give away $100, $500 a year. Should reconsider what they're doing. It's the watershed groups. And by watershed, I mean the broadest sense, the neighborhood groups, the people that are fighting to protect land, air, and water at the local level that I think are ultimately the ones that are going to save the planet. I mean, these, 1,000 little Mattole restoration things, a little tiny valley in Northern California that took 5 years to restore the valley, raised the carbon sink of the valley immeasurably, brought the salmon back into the streams, purified the water so they can drink it again, and created a contribution to the global ecology by doing so. You do that a million places around the world, and make every protected area a carbon sink, you can solve this problem.